Hey, Mitch.
Oh, hey, Ed, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Are you excited about Spider-Man?
Oh, you know it, Ed. I got my tickets for No Way Home. I'm gonna go to the movies
No, no,
tomorrow.
no,
It's
no,
the
no,
best.
no, no, not the new movie. I'm talking about 1977's The Amazing Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah, I love that show. The effects were so great on it. It was
What? No,
unbelievable.
you know the web slinging. It looked ridiculous.
No, it didn't. Watch this.
Well, if that's so impressive, why don't you try hanging from the ceiling?
Okay, I can do that.
Enough said. Hi, this is Ed Dollister.
And this is Mitch Halleck.
And welcome to another exciting episode of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. In fact, Mitch, did you know that this is our 50th episode?
I did because you just told me that.
So there you go. Happy the
Happy
big
50th, Ed. You don't look a day over 49.
Thank you. It's all that pig
Lot of
placenta
work,
I
man.
inject in. But anyway, that's a whole different story.
Human embryos.
Welcome
right?
back to Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. If it's your first time here, welcome. Thanks for joining us. If you're a regular and a subscriber, thanks for coming back. We really appreciate it. Hey, Mitch, if you want to find out a bit more about our show and when it comes up, what's the thing that you should do?
Oh, Ed, it is simple as spinning a web any size, catching thief just like flies. All you got to do is hit the subscribe button right on the bottom, and you will know when Ed and I go on another web swinging excellent adventure like we are today. Where are we going, Ed?
We're going back to 1977 to The Amazing Spider-Man, the TV series that had a bit of a spotty history. It didn't have a long run, but it ran for, like till 1979. It had 3 movies even.
Yeah.
It was, for some reason, it's not beloved, or it's not as well remembered perhaps as some of those other earlier superhero works, but I suppose it should be well known because it is really the first time, not including the Electric Company's version of Spider-Man, but it's the first time that we've seen Spider-Man as a real live action TV
Live
star.
action show. Yeah. Yeah, you know what's weird? I remember watching this as a kid because I'm a bit older than you, and I live here in the United States of America, where they showed Spider-Man on CBS, and I'm going to say it was in September of 77, if I could recall the brain cells, because I remember being a kid at school, and we all loved Spider-Man. We all read Marvel Comics, and we all were so juiced and excited because we heard there was going to be a Spider-Man TV show. The ads ran in the comic books, and it was like the buzz. There was no internet. This was pre-internet, so this was the only way you can get the buzz out there. And we all were like so excited to see Spider-Man. How were they going to do it? Because like you said, we remember the Electric Company, which was all well intended, but they really didn't have the much superhero action. You know what I mean?
Well, he didn't even speak, did he? Spider-Man.
He didn't even
and the
speak.
Electric
He just had
Company.
those word balloons. But he had some interesting guests, like somebody would steal a W or a T, and they'd cause all type of havoc on that show. Or Spider-Man would show up and help you with a number or something. But it wasn't riveting, to say the least. But this was going to be a live action 1 hour CBS show, and they had already done Hulk. They'd already done Wonder Woman. We had $6 Million Man. We had all these superhero
ISIS,
shows.
Shazam.
Shazam was on CBS. We're like, this is going to be something else. And boy, was it something else when it showed up, Ed. It was a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, it was. It was I think they call it a backdoor pilot, which is, with the hopes to, create a TV series. So they did a telemovie. They actually released the telemovie outside of America in cinemas. Yeah. And I am 95% sure that is where I saw it at the Pix Cinemas.
It ran in Australia as a movie. I looked it up. I was like, that might have been something little Ed could have seen over in Australia.
It did, as a 7-year-old. And this was, obviously 77 was the time Star Wars had come out. We knew of not everyone, again, you said, like the internet wasn't around, so you had to read about these things in like Starlog magazine or Starburst or things like that. Fantastic films.
Yep.
Superman the movie hadn't come out yet. We knew it was being made, but it hadn't come out yet. So this Spider-Man was going to be pretty exciting. And from, what, as someone who just watched it recently, the the first movie again, I really enjoyed this telling of Spider-Man, and I thought as an origin story, it worked really well. I thought Nicholas Hammond, who is probably best known at that point for playing, we have a link because he played Friedrich in The Sound of Music. So did I. 10 years later, I played Friedrich in The Sound of Music.
So you know what that means? You're soon to be wearing Spider-Man's outfit because you too, Ed, will be Peter Parker.
That's right. That's right. Well, I've almost got the hairstyle today. So
yeah, you do.
So that's kind of
good. 70s do.
That's right. So I thought he had a really earnest performance as Peter Parker.
He was Christopher Reeve. Now, like you just said, Superman had not come out yet. And prior to that, we only had Adam West as Batman, who kind of did it tongue in cheek. So this was the first time you saw this youthful hero alter ego, because Clark Kent wasn't there. Christopher Reeve hadn't perfected that performance yet. So yeah, Nicholas Hammond was pioneering that earnest, do-gooder type of kid who was out there trying to solve crime and work on mysteries and such like that. Yeah, that hadn't been.
And I thought he absolutely nailed it. He was a little naive. He always wanted to do good. And I think that first telemovie where he started to discover his powers after being bitten by the radioactive spider, everything made sense. Apart from, I could have thought they would have seen that spider in there, but
it was a pretty big spider. In the comics, it's a small spider that's up on a web, and Peter's in high school, and he goes to a science fair experiment, and the spider drops down on the web and gets zapped with radioactivity, and as it's dying, it lands on the back of Peter's hand in the classic Steve Ditko Stan Lee comic book, Amazing Fantasies 15, right here. And then he discovers his weapon. You know what's so funny? There's scenes in that pilot movie that I recognize as a comic book fan that you might now, as he's walking down the alleyway and there's a car towards him. In the comics, one of the ways he knows that he has spider powers is he's not paying attention and he walks in and a car almost hits him. And he jumps out of the way of the car and he jumps up onto a wall. And then he figures out that he can climb walls. And that scene is in the telemovie there. As a car is coming towards Peter down an alleyway, he jumps out of the way. And next thing you know, he's climbing up the side of a building, which was
that's right.
Good.
He has that sort of that spidey sense, that precognition where he could sense it. And look, one thing that I think that most people remember from the TV series and the movies was the special effects of Spidey actually climbing buildings and things like that was pretty spectacular. Given that
there's no CGI back then.
They did use some. Now the version that I looked at was a pretty low res version, so they did do some blue screen, or I think it was video chroma key back in the day. And to be honest, at low resolution, which it probably was on TVs,
most TVs, we didn't have 4K TVs back then.
That's right. It actually looked okay, but all the wire work that they did, where they had Peter, as you said, escaping that car, he was climbing up, was pretty spectacular. They also had the famous one where it was actually Spider-Man climbing up the Empire State
Building.
Which looked, I mean, I know you knew.
I know. I'm not. Look, as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, we were all damn impressed because, like you said, we never saw anything like that before, and we had Batman climbing up on a rope on the old TV show. That's about it. And we all knew how they did that. It was just on its side. Spoiler alert. But no, this was a real deal. And the fella's name that was the stuntman is Fred
War.
Maybe we can pop. Yeah, he does all the Spider-Man stunts. It's not Nicholas Hammond. Sorry to ruin that one too. But yeah, there was one I saw where he's coming down upside down as he's crawling down. I'm like, you got to give the guy credit. I mean, the blood's probably rushing to his head. He's coming down the side of a building straight. I mean, that slips, he's going to do a head dive right into the cement. It's not going to be pretty, but no. And he kind of does it with the feet and the hand, kind of, walks up it like,
it looked pretty impressive.
Pretty good. Yeah.
He also came up with the head camera mount that he used. So when he was climbing, and there's some great first person shots of him standing on the edge of like the building,
Yeah,
or you could just see his hands, like from a first person point of view
as he's climbing. Yeah.
which was great and really immersed you in what it was like to be Spider-Man, I felt. So I think they did that really well. The costume.
Yeah, it's long before those cameras. What do the kids wear? The GoPros.
Oh, the GoPros.
He kind of invented a GoPro back then.
That's right.
And I'll tell you what, the first pilot movie, we could go into the cast, but they did a couple things that were really cool that they kind of changed when they did it a regular series. He has the Spider-Man costume. I remember Aunt May is calling him downstairs. They lived in a beautiful house, by the way.
They did.
Aunt May of the comics. They didn't have much money, Peter did. And but this one, they had a dining room and they had another
he had a lot. His bedroom was huge.
Yeah. He had this turret that was on the side of the house, and she's calling him down this big grand staircase, like, Peter, I'll be right there, Aunt May. And he's putting on his costume, and he puts it on for the first time, and he pulls it off. It's actually pretty faithful, which is one of the things they never did on these TV shows. Like Wonder Woman's costume was probably the first one ever that really looked like it, but it always seemed a little cheesy. But no, he actually had the Spider-Man costume from the comics and stuff. That's what it looked like. The only thing that they had to change was the eyes.
Yes.
Because in the comics, he had just a white, spot that was supposed to be like a two-way lens because it's a comic. You could draw that. But on TV, they didn't perfect two-way eyeglasses back then, I guess. So we have these like shiny mirror eyes, and there was like little holes in them.
Yeah, that's so it wouldn't fog up when he was when the stuntman was,
and they were rounder too. They were more like this than the traditional pointy cat eyes or something. The Spider. But again, we quibble about minor things about his costume. But what I was saying is what they changed from the pilot to the show is they then added the web shooters, which Spider-Man usually wears under his outfit, and his utility belt.
Yes.
Which is part of his costume. They put this white belt on the outside, and it always drove me nuts watching that show. We would always say to go, why is web shooters and utility belt on the outside of his costume? Why are you doing that to us? But who knows?
Why does Indy wear his sash under his jacket
under
or
the
over
coat?
His jacket?
Again, questions man wasn't meant to know. But anyway, back to the show. Also in the cast for the pilot episode, you might know him as
I do.
Larry
I know
Tate.
where you're going. Are you talking
From
about
Bewitched.
Larry Tate?
Larry Tate from Bewitched is on that show as J.
David
Jonah
White.
Jameson.
Yep.
What's his real name? The
David
actor's
White.
David White. Kind of cranky, kind of like the J.K. Simmons that we're going to see years later in the movies. But to me, it's Larry Tate from Bewitched. I couldn't get over that.
He looked pretty much identical to Larry Tate from the show.
Bewitched.
So
yeah, it's distracting. You're just like, that's something too. He was a fine performance, but you know what? They also had this fellow on there named Robbie Robertson, who is an Afro-American character in the comics, one of the first supporting cast members that was a black character in the Marvel comics. In the show, the pilot, he never appears on the series, but he is in the pilot episode. He's played by an actor named Haley. I can't think of it off. He was on MASH a couple times.
Okay.
He showed up as a guest appearance on MASH, and there was also a show called Rollout, which was like a MASH World War II Black Army Corps group, and he was on there. Oh, I can't think of his name right now. It's on the tip
We'll put it up right now.
It's like Lois Lane. It's like one of those names where it's like double letter HH. But anyway, he's on as Robbie Robertson. Aunt May's in the show. I'm trying to think if they had any other characters.
They had Captain Barbera, who was like a new character that was like a police chief played by Michael Pataki. Who is best known probably as being one of the Klingons in Star Trek, the original series.
That's where I saw him from. I'm like, I know this guy from somewhere.
Yes. There's a lot of familiar faces in when you watch a lot of 70s TV, you do see a lot of guest actors,
the same ones,
that pop up and everything like that. So,
we forgot the bad guy in this episode is Thayer David. Now,
Yes.
he was the bad guy. Now, what this episode has is Spider-Man. Not only does he get his origin story where he gets bitten by the spider and he gets his powers and he becomes his costume thing. What's going on is there's these pins that these folks are wearing. They're part of some like, what would you call a cult or a self-help group or something like that.
Yes.
And it was a mind control type of thing. So when the bad guy would set off this sound, it would take control of their thoughts. And they had a lawyer, and I think the other fellow was a doctor, if I'm not mistaken, in the
Yes.
opening episode. And they sound the thing, and they go on a bank robbery, and then they crash the car, and then the bad guys come and steal the money from the wreckage. And everyone's like, why would a bank teller and or a doctor and a lawyer suddenly just stop what they're doing and go rob banks? And you find out that the mean con man, if you will, has these mind control devices there. And there's a scary scene, and I remember this because I was a kid, but Peter Parker goes undercover to solve the mystery of what's going on here. And the cult leader puts one of the pins on Peter. And he goes to the top of, is it the Empire State Building? And tells him to jump off. And he's literally going to jump off the building. I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And again, I'm spoiler alert for this 45, 50-year-old show. The pin rubs against one of the metal posts on the Empire State Building and falls off. Yeah. And that's how Peter doesn't die. But the actor, Thayer David, unfortunately, he dies not too soon after this. He's like 51 years old. He's very young. You might know him from Rocky because he was the promoter for Apollo Creed, and he's the ring announcer. That's his big thing. And he was in shows like The Dark Shadows, and he had a string of like appearances in the early 70s. But I know him because on the Spider-Man record album that came out in 1973 that had Rene Auberjonois, a.k.a. Odo, who played Spider-Man Peter Parker on the record album, the same actor, Thayer David, was the voice of the Kingpin on the record album. Now, the Kingpin's a huge Spider-Man villain. He goes on to be a big bad guy in the Daredevil comics and the TV show as well. And he's just popped up on another show, but I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But he was the Kingpin on the record album, and he's the bad guy in the pilot episode. So I don't know if they did that on purpose or if that was just a coincidence. So a little bit of trivia.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. I do know that they did some changes for season 2. Again, the first season only ran for like about 5 episodes. It was very short.
It was a big ratings hit though, which is really bizarre. It made like 33% share, which is like a third of the viewing audience out there watched the Spider-Man movie. That's a pretty big number nowadays. I mean, they have like 30 million people watching the Spider-Man movie. And
what they essentially did, they just didn't want to commit to. I think they were concerned with certainly at some point in their run that they didn't want to become known as the superhero network because they had all these other TV shows. We mentioned Incredible Hulk and Wonder Woman and ISIS and all that had just wrapped up. And they had the cartoon shows. They had the
Shazam. They had ISIS. Yeah, they did have. CBS was known for having a lot of superhero shows. They had the Captain America movies. They had the Doctor Strange movies. So they were doing a lot of superhero stuff. Yeah.
So they sort of wanted to. They were sort of hedging their bets a little bit in that they'd put on an episode when they wanted it to go up against something. And try and dent the ratings for that other show.
Like $6 Million Man or something.
And things like that. And it still was really successful. But it came back for season 2, which had another bunch of episodes, but they did have some changes. So they got rid of most of the main characters. Robert F. Simons, who was the new J. Jonah Jameson. Jameson. Actually, you know what I did like in the opening, the first episode, because they bring in a new character played by Chip Fields, and she goes, boy, he's changed a lot in a year. There's a nice little nod to it.
A wink, wink, nod, nod.
And did you know that Chip Fields?
I do. Go ahead.
I was going to say her daughter is Kim Fields, who was in The Facts of Life.
I knew that. Yep. Not only that, she's from Ronnie Spector and the Ronettes, the singing group. That's where her first claim to fame is 73. You ever heard of Ronnie Spector?
Yeah.
The singer? She's her background group. And like you just mentioned, she's the mother of Kim Fields. And she has another daughter that's an actress. I can't think of her name on the top of my head, but we're going to show it right here. But she's another actress. So, yeah, Chip Fields. Who knew?
Who knew?
Now you knew. Thank
That's
you.
right. Well,
And then
anyway,
there's a
by
different
the
Aunt May, by the way. There's
sorry?
never the same Aunt May. They keep getting different
Oh,
Aunt
no,
Mays for
that's
it's like
right.
Felix Leiter and James Bond. It's like, why
Yes.
can't you get the same actor? But no, whatever.
That is true. But J. Jonah Jameson changed quite dramatically from season 1 to season 2,
Mhm.
which was sort of interesting, and they sort of never found the right tone. I think there was a lot of, some people were saying, well, it's too comic book like, and then
Yeah,
other
it's
people
too
were saying
kiddish.
it's too kiddish, and then others were saying, well, it's too serious. It's not
Yeah,
comic
yeah.
book enough like, and reports were that Stan Lee wasn't very happy
Oh
with.
no, he did not like that. I can tell you that. He never liked the show. Yeah.
So
He thought he thought it was too kiddish, actually. He thought they didn't do it justice because that's his baby. Spider-Man is Stanley's like, you know, dream child. He always wanted the best for Spidey.
yeah,
And no, he wasn't happy with the production. Again, it was supposed to be in New York, but honestly, other than a couple of the exterior shots of the Empire State Building and some of the stock footage, it was shot in LA.
yes,
And you could tell because the buildings in LA are not as
they're very flat, aren't they?
they're very flat. They're only one because that happens when you have earthquakes. They tend not to build multi-story buildings that may collapse. They kind of do 1 or 2 or 3 stories as opposed to New York where everything's like 30, 40 stories because we don't have a lot of land. You got to go up. You
Yep.
can't go out. Where Los Angeles, they spread out. So that was noticeable on the show as a kid. I'm like, that's not New York. Where is this place? So there. One of the little pet peeves I had as a kid. And you know what the other thing a lot of people complain is, again, I mentioned Electric Company. He had more interesting superhero villains on the Electric Company than he did on this show because, like you said, budget reasons or whatever, they wanted to be more realistic. So they didn't have things like the Rhino or the Green Goblin or
Doc Ock
Mysterio
or anything.
or
Yeah.
any of that stuff. No, there was no costume supervillains on this show at all.
But could
It was
they?
just
I
normal
mean,
bank robbers or
could they do
you
it
know.
really? I mean, the
Well,
effects. Look, the effects of the time, as we said, the climbing effects. There's some really good, though, where sequences indoors, where Spider-Man leaps onto the ceiling and then
yeah.
falls across. There was some really, clever effects for the time. I felt for a TV show, but how could they have done, Green Goblin hovering around or
Well, no, there's that too. But then there's even sometimes you talk about effects. One of the things that drove me nuts as a kid was the rope web thing. Like he'd put his hand out and you'd see like you'd hear this noise and the rope would kind of like wrap around things. But once he was, I think it's in the pilot. There's this big brute goon guy and he takes him and he throws Spider-Man off the top of a building.
yeah,
And you can tell it's not really Nicholas Hammond. It's kind of like a dummy in a costume. And he throws it. And as Spider-Man's falling from the building in between an alleyway, he spins a web and he makes like a big net. And it's basically a big like rope hammock. And he kind of
yeah.
lands in it, rolls off that. But again, little minor squibbles, I get it. But they did do some interesting stories where, again, they didn't have super villains, but they had an episode where he fights a clone of himself, which is
Yes.
kind of ironic because that's a huge infamous storyline in the Spider-Man comics where there's a clone of Peter Parker and years later it comes back after he thinks it's dead and they pulled a big switch on the fans. They said, "Oh, that Spider-Man you've been reading about for years, that's not really Spider-Man. That's the clone. The real one left years ago. So 25 years you've been reading about a clone and not the real deal." That was a big deal. So they had a clone version. Then they had one where Spider-Man's in the Wild West, which was kind of weird because they must have gone onto the back lot and filmed on a Western scene where I remember him like a gun battle, like a
Yeah.
shootout type
He
of
was
thing.
not a web slinger, a gunslinger.
A gun, exactly. So it was little things like that. And then there's somebody had an atom bomb they were going to blow up
Yes,
in New York.
that
was the first
was
episode.
that was in one of the early seasons where that's actually where they had another reporter from Florida come in to talk about Peter Parker, and that was actually the ISIS actress herself, Joanna Cassidy. Cameron. That's right,
Cameron,
Joanna
yeah, yeah.
Cassidy's from Blade Runner. So and I was thinking, oh, we could have had an ISIS.
Well, no, two different universes, buddy. DC and
I know,
Marvel.
I know.
Big-
Well, there was talk.
again, no.
There was talk of Nicholas Hammond has spoken about. There was a talk of having a Incredible Hulk Spider-Man crossover
yeah.
episode in 1984, but that never eventuated. Listen to Comic Book Central, where you can hear Nicholas Hammond talk all about that with our friend Joe Stuber.
What is this Comic Book Central you speak
I
of?
don't know. I just
I
thought
don't
I'd,
know. Never heard of it.
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that happened too. But again, the show only lasts 13 episodes altogether if you want to count the pilot as an episode. So it left. But when it was on, like I mentioned earlier, it used to get good ratings.
Mm.
But for some reason, they got cold feet and they just canceled it along with everything else because it would show up sporadically. I remember you'd be like, "Hey, Spider-Man is going to be on this week." Really? And then you'd go watch it. And
Mhm.
I think the last episode they take him to Japan, if I'm not mistaken.
They
And
go to Hong Kong.
Hong
I
Kong. I'm
think they
sorry.
filmed it in Hong Kong. So we said that the pilot telemovie was released in cinemas called Spider-Man. They released another 2 episodes. I think it was The Deadly Dust that they did as a movie that they released overseas as well called
Spider-Man Strikes Back.
Strikes Back. And then
Yeah,
the
so
last 2 episodes, basically the Dragon's Challenge. They said
that's it.
Spider-Man, the Dragon's Challenge, and they released that as a movie. And they did, okay. Not
Yeah.
Star Wars numbers, not
No,
Superman
no. We're
numbers, but they
talking in
did
the
okay.
70s. Yeah. I remember as a kid, I'd go to the movies and they would repackage the Green Hornet TV series with
Yes.
Bruce Lee, and they'd make them like movies. They'd sell them as movies, but you'd go and it was really just 2 episodes of the Green Hornet show, which is similar to Spider-Man because it only lasted 1 season and it only had about 13 or 15 episodes. So they'd have to repackage them, and that's
Well,
kind of like
they did that
Spider-Man.
again also with famously with Battlestar Galactica, Buck
Yep.
Rogers. Also, Space 1999. They did a number of movies that they put
Well, in the Night
episodes together.
Stalker too,
Yes.
Kolchak the Night Stalker, they would take 2 45, 50-minute episodes and kind of splurge them together, and they'd do these little like I don't know, connecting bridge scenes if you want. We're like, hey, did you hear what happened to Spider-Man the other day? He happened to go to China. Really?
Yeah.
And then they would just go into that episode. In
Yes.
fact, those little scenes I'm talking about appear in those movies, but I don't think you can find them on YouTube. They weren't part of the original show.
No, I
went
think they
back and
released
they
them
filmed-
on VHS.
VHS, yeah.
Like that. It was a bit like the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles, where they went back and filmed those bridging little scenes.
Yeah.
To do that. But you know what? I suppose what surprises me, nostalgia is huge. Look, we're doing a show about, everything that we love when we grew up. But you don't, you can buy those fantastic Mego figures, re-releases, and I know they've brought out the
back there.
Yep.
That's the real deal back there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. Actually, where's my Planet of the? I've got Shazam back there and a few others that you might be able to see over my shoulder. And they've brought out the Hasbro have brought out the vintage style re-release Marvel characters from the.
Yep.
Why haven't we seen any love for the Amazing Spider-Man TV series?
I don't know. And then I start thinking, is it a rights issue because it's a CBS thing, and CBS is owned by Paramount, I guess, because I don't know where it is right now. You'd think Disney would own it, but Disney doesn't own the TV show, maybe, because it's like the Batman TV show. For years, people were like, why isn't this on VHS or DVD or whatever? And it was a rights issue because 20th Century Fox made the show, yet CBS owned part of it. And it's same thing with Star Trek. Yep. It's a Desilu thing. It ran on CBS, but yet Paramount owned it. So one person could do the movies and one person could do the TV show, and it was kind of awkward who owned what. Even now, Spider-Man's rights are all screwed up when it comes to movies and TV because Disney owns Marvel, but they don't own the rights to Sony's Spider-Man movies. So when you watch Disney Plus, you're not going to see the Homecoming and Far From Home and all that stuff because Sony has it. I don't know why, but you're not going to see it on there. But anyway, Nicholas Hammond.
He's great, and we'll have to tag Mr. Hammond in this so we can see if we can get some.
And I can't say this, Ed.
Yep.
He was going to be part of Terrificon 2020. I had worked with him, and it was going to get here because of the dastardly supervillain virus known as COVID.
Yeah,
we had to cancel the show, unfortunately. But unlike most times when I say he lived right down my street, he does not. He moved right down your street back in 1984 or 5. He's been living in Australia, not too far from you, for many decades now. So there you go.
That's
where
true.
Nicholas
That's
Hammond
true. And
is.
he does do occasionally some he still acts and he
Yeah.
does occasionally do some telemovies and
Well, I
TV
just
series
saw
and
him
things
in
like that.
Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yes.
He played the director in that Leonardo DiCaprio movie with Brad Pitt, directed by everyone's favorite Quentin Tarantino,
That's right.
just about 2 years ago.
Because he was a fan of the Spider-Man TV series.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of fans of Spider-Man TV series. Before we go, I got to mention all the
Yep.
people that pop up in that show. We said it was on CBS. You know how you can tell it's on CBS? Because a lot of the actors from most of the CBS shows, especially MASH, pop up on this thing. Robert Alda is the bad
Yes.
guy in one episode. Arbus,
Alan Arbus.
Alan Arbus, who was Sidney Friedman on MASH, pops up as a bad guy there too. Rosalind Chow, who plays Klinger's wife eventually, and she's also on Deep Space Nine. She shows up in the 2-part episode.
Ted Danson?
Ted Danson shows up as a major in the Army, I believe, or the Air Force. Only has like one line, but it's there. Ted Danson, his name's on the credit at the end, way before Cheers made him famous. I think this might be his first role. Who else is from MASH? Well, we mentioned Robert K. Simon. He's or whatever his name, Robert Simon. He's the General Mitchell from the first seasons of MASH. He's on there. And who else from MASH is on there? Oh, I mentioned the other actor. I couldn't think of his name. He's on there. Right now, you can catch him on YouTube. There's one YouTube video that has like all of them on there. I was
like 11 hours.
It's 11 hours. I was fast forwarding and go, oh my God, that's every episode of the Spider-Man show. And then somebody else is on YouTube that's gone and done 35mm restorations of the pilot episode. I believe they'll show before and after, and they clean it up. So it's really kind of cool how you can see more of the costume detail, because like you said, the TVs were not the best in the 70s. So you didn't see all that detail on the Spider-Man costumes and such.
I was watching I've got the Blu-rays of Buck Rogers, and we're watching we occasionally watch an episode and looking at their helmets in Buck Rogers in Blu-ray, and then it's upscaled to 4K. Boy, you can see the hand-painted, really shoddily hand-painted things on their helmets and stuff like that. So
really,
again, a lot of these, no one ever imagined that the quality would be that amazing in the future that they'd have. So you got to forgive it a little bit, but overall it's a good fun watch. And I watched the pilot movie in its entirety, and I was thoroughly entertained.
And that's a compliment coming from you, because you don't like a lot of Marvel stuff.
I don't. I just said
he's a DC guy. He's a DC guy. Watch our special Marvel versus DC. You'll know what's going on.
That's right. It'll be up here. You can click on the link up there, and you can watch that. But that's okay. I did like this one, so I did enjoy it. So I'd certainly recommend watching it. And if you're a Spider-Man completist and you're watching all the it has been reported. I did read an interview with Nicholas Hammond saying that he is not in the latest movie.
Right. I know. All the other Spider-Man might be in it. I don't know yet. I'll have to see tomorrow when I see the movie. By the time you watch this, I might be at the theater. And of course, in Australia, for some reason, they've already got Spider-Man.
It's already opened.
No Way Home.
I could be watching it now, but I wanted to speak to you, Mitch, instead.
It's the whole Superman 2 thing all over again.
It is. Whatever. But it's only like 24 hours earlier, so it's all right. You can stay off the interwebs till then and avoid any spoilers.
But in the meantime, Ed,
yes,
what should people do if they want to get more entertainment from the world of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventures?
Well, it's as easy as being bitten by a radioactive spider. All you need to do is click on. You threw me for a loop. I feel like we're in a role reversal.
No, Ed, we're in a multiverse right now.
Oh, that's okay. Is that actually I've been a clone all this time, just to let you know.
I knew it. The real Ed's gone. Because the real Ed would never like a Marvel show. That's why I know it's not you.
Foiled. All you need to do is click on the button below and the little bell, and you'll be notified every time we go on a new and exciting adventure. Is that the clone?
That's the clone. Yeah, that's the clone book right there. Yeah.
Is he fighting Black Panther? Who's that on the other?
No, he's fighting himself, and that's the Jackal.
Oh, the Jackal.
The Jackal. Yeah. In fact, Ed, if they keep clicking on this episode, I'll give somebody my copy.
Oh my!
Spider-Man 1, right here. No, I won't. Imagine that.
Oh my!
I'm gonna
gosh.
open it up.
No,
you're
gonna eat it on it when we get 1,000 subscribers.
If we get a million subscribers, I'm gonna eat this right on the air.
All right, you heard that here first. So
enjoy. You wanted to see it.
That's right. That's right. So enjoy The Amazing Spider-Man and enjoy some of our episodes of Mitch and Ed's Excellent Adventure. This is coming out just close to Christmas. So don't forget, we've also got our alternative Christmas movies that you might be interested in. And we've got a whole slew of other topics. So hopefully you can enjoy some of those if you haven't seen them already. If you're watching this around Christmas time, have a fantastic Christmas and a new year. And we'll be back, though, with another exciting episode pretty soon.
I don't know. We might send away for this 10-foot inflatable boa constrictor. That.
It might, if I order it now, it might get here just in time for the next episode. You never know. This is Ed Dollister.
And this is Amazing Mitch Halleck.
And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye.